So this is one of our last sites that we'll visit today probably. And this is a site that really goes to show how fast glossy buckthorn can come in and how thick it can come in. So this area used to look like that area back there. This was just a start to what our guys are starting. The glossy buckthorn, glossy buckthorn came in super thick and super aggressive that it basically knocked out all of the understory that was in this section. So now this is probably going to be one of our test areas where we're going to try to plant super dense and try to get that really good overstory happening to try to see if that's going to help mitigate any of the regrowth that'll come back up. This is probably going to be like one of our only test sites while we test it for the first few years. Normally what will happen when we deal with the glossy buckthorn as well, they'll come in with the thinning saws, they'll knock it all down, and they'll have people coming in behind them and taking all of the wood out again. They did this once all the berries were already off, so getting the wood out isn't quite as quick of a project this time around. Normally it's like they knock it down, we have our summer students, they're throwing it into the chipper, it gets chipped, and then it gets into our yard and it's burned. Like, since there was no berries, they're leaving it, and over the next few weeks they'll start taking all of this understory down, because that also can cause regrowth with glossy buckthorn, because it basically can grow off of anything. That is how heavily invasive it is.
What are you thinking of planting in here?
I think we're still taking a look at it, but we are trying to grow some cedar trees. We might try some of our poplar that we have, some willows, okay, aspen, if we can get some up and going, because our cuttings tend to come up really fast, really easy, and that's both our balsam poplar and our willows. So by the time we get them in here, they're already quite well established, so they'll have a good little shade cover over it to begin with. And then the great thing about it is we might plant them tight, but our guys will still be able to come in and around all the seedlings because we flag them so that they're still able to cut all the glossy buckthorn that's coming up in between it.
This is very labor intensive.
It is. Our poor guys hate us for it.
It's coming back really fast too.
Yeah, like you can see where some of this little stuff, this would have probably been cut and it's already coming back up. It gets cut, it comes back more aggressive. Like Kevin said, you cut one stem, you'll get 6.
What about silver maple?
We don't have a great source of it here in the park. I only have one tree and it has not produced seeds for me since I started working here. I have a little bit of it that we might consider putting into this area, but I'm still working on my silver maple knowledge.
There's lots along the river valley, the St. John River Valley.
Mactaquac watershed has
that's actually
they
who
plant
gifted
a lot
us
of it.
Our seeds from last year. They gifted us a few, I think we got about 200 trees worth of silver maples from them, which was really amazing. It'll be great to put in different areas of the park because we have very select silver maples throughout the park. They just haven't produced seeds the years that I've wanted them to, because they're ones that take a few years in between each seed. Each time they seed, it could take 3 to 7 years for them to get seeds on it again, compared to a red maple that gets seed every year. That also really depends on what we grow per year, is what seeds are coming up that year.
Right.
Because a lot of our trees are very dependent. Like sometimes it's a 2-year cycle, sometimes it's a 7-year cycle. Black cherry could be like a 10-year cycle. Like I got black cherry this year, I probably won't see it for another 10 years.
So it'll be interesting to see how this goes and be interesting to follow it up. I know we'd like to. This is one example of invasive species. And the other one, which was mentioned and by the park manager, was the emerald ash borer. And I think everybody's heard so much about the emerald ash borer the last little while. You do have ash on quite a bit of ash?
We have quite a bit of ash in our campground and kind of down by the river.
Had you seen a lot of emerald ash borer damage?
We really haven't noticed any damage in our park yet. I'm noticing a few have crown diebacks, but it also could just be because some of our ash are in that age range to start dying back anyways. So we're keeping an eye on it to see if it's caused by the emerald ash borer, if it's just caused from them declining in general. And that was the other thing. It's I was going through and I was looking and I was like, oh, that top of the crown doesn't look great. But I'm like, but was it because there was snow? Is it because it's dying? There's no other real signs of emerald ash borer in our park besides having the smoky wing beetle bandit, which kind of makes us know that it is somewhere close if we have that other species here.
Actually, this is the first place I've heard of that. They've been talking about that smoky
The smoky wing beetle bandit.
Smoky wing beetle bandit. Say that 10 times.
Yeah, right?
So actually, when Chris and I were here earlier, they were talking about it being having this beetle in the park, and that the ash didn't seem to be as damaged. There is right down the road there an old ball field. So Chris and I went down there to have a look a few weeks ago, and sure enough, you could see these tiny little holes, which we believe that were these little beetles that are around. So I know this is something they've talked about trying to get introduced here. And if it is coming naturally, because I don't think it was brought here, it just showed up, came for a weekend and stayed, one of those. And that's great. And that may be the control that we need for our emerald ash borer. It's a hope. It's got to be one. This is the first time I've heard of it. I have heard of it. They've talked about it out in other provinces. I don't know if it's Manitoba or Ontario, and the need for these old ball fields are great. And there is one right on the turn before you go down to Trigo there. There is an old ball field there. So we wanted to go in and see, and sure enough, there is evidence that it's coming there. So if there's anything hopeful about that, is we're seeing nature will take care of some things themselves.
Yeah. And we do know that the beetle is there for sure, because we did have our summer students do a little survey and just make sure that like those weren't just any other random hole. Like they seen the beetle coming into the nest. They seen them kind of flying around. They didn't see them bring anything back, which is what we were really hoping for. But they did see the beetles and know that they're there and know that they're present within the area still. And it's not just residual holes or anything like that.
So that's encouraging.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there'll be something that'll take care of this, though. I don't know what that would be.
Because the beavers hate glossy buckthorn, unfortunately. They like to eat everything else, but we opened up all the area at the beaver pond and the beavers went, oh my God, there's trees here. And all the trees that have been hidden for 30 years growing in the glossy buckthorn, all of a sudden we'd come the one day, one tree would be down. We'd come 2 days later, another tree would be down. Yeah, like they were hiding all of these gorgeous trees. And the beavers came along and went, whoa, you just gave us more food.
So maybe there'll be something, or you may have to get goats.
Yeah.
You know, just have a little goat population that apparently can move around. So,
yeah.
Those are a couple examples of what could move into your woodlot, to be aware of them, to kind of educate yourself of them. I mean, we've seen a lot of examples here of blowdowns, you know, just knowing what you have again. Now, if this was a huge open field, obviously you probably would have seen even more. And we didn't really touch on here too much on erosion. I don't know if you've seen much erosion in the park.
We don't have a whole lot here within the park, but I think we're pretty lucky that like our banks are relatively stabilized by a lot of cedar trees. And we find that that is really helping. So that's not a problem that's on our radar yet. I know it's a problem in a few other parks that we have around the province. It probably will be as the trees start dying, because like Kevin said, a lot of our stuff is, we're unfortunately have a very even-aged forest, and what we always tell the kids and when they come in is the reason that they're here and helping us and the reason that we're doing what we're doing is because we want to try to make it so that when they come with their kids that they don't have no forest, because you don't really want to come to a park that is flattened again. So our goal is to try to get the different age classes within our forest to try to help have a beautiful, luscious forest for the years to come.
Does anybody here have water, or they have their woodlots or they're coastal or along the edges of waterways or anything? That's another thing too. Just even if you have slopes on your woodlots, when we see our rain, when we did have the rain, back in the spring when we had lots of rain, we just didn't get a little bit of rain. We were getting 2 inches of rain at a time. Very, very hard on a lot of places. You would get trails being washed out. You would get a lot of soil being removed from around the sides of trees. So that is something else that you need to take care to notice on your woodlot. If you're starting to see these areas, how far will it go? How much are you going to lose? Those kinds of things are very important to talk about, for sure.
I'm wondering about the emerald ash borer.
Yeah.
If you did find that, is there some place that you need to go and find out like how bad it is? Is there a benchmark in New Brunswick where it's an infestation or something not to worry about or anything along that?
If you find it, you're basically screwed.
That's the optimistic point. No, it's often here a while before you recognize that you have it. And it can kill the tree within 5 years. So if you do have it, I wouldn't worry about trying to find out how bad it is. I would deal with what you've got. If you've got it on your woodlot, you want to cut it down. I would say burn it. Yeah. Don't traipse it off to somewhere else to get it identified. You could possibly, yeah. It is here, but you know, if you don't, I can't see, and maybe I'm wrong, but if you only have a few scattering of ash trees around, I can't imagine, you know, it really finding those few scattering of, it could, but it kind of tends to go where there's more heavily population. You see a lot along the St. John River Valley. I live down Majorville, Sheffield, and it's moved right down there. Ormocto has had it a number of years ago, and it's really made a difference there. It likes the waterways to move.
It typically doesn't move quickly, like 700 meters to 1,000 meters a year, actually. But humans are our worst enemy. Like where you started to see it in New Brunswick is basically at the tourist stops.
Yes.
So that's or around railway yards, or one of the prime movers for it is just moving fuel wood around.
Yes.
We actually found it in nursery stock coming out of Ontario years ago. So yeah, it can move a multitude of different ways, and no thanks to humans.
How do we spot it early? How do we know we got it?
The thing is, once you spot it,
You see that.
you almost have a total infestation then.
Okay,
so
so you
it-
can't find it early.
The only there are a couple ways. Use some trapping for detection, but you can also do some branch sampling. But you typically have to get up kind of mid canopy in the trees in order to get the branches, because you may not find it at the base of the tree. Once you get up in the mid crown area, it could be just totally infested.
We do have back, before you leave, there are some little cards, little wallet-sized cards that can show you, you know, what the characteristics to look for a number of different diseases and insects that Dan picked up. And one is this D-shaped little exit hole.
Yeah, capital D.
I will say, when it was found in Fredericton at the first initial site, one of the arboricultural technicians noticed woodpecker activity, and that kind of directed towards some trees. And then we got a bucket truck there and took some samples, and that's when we found it. Yeah, yeah. And it was midwinter. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's being aware of some of these things as you can.